Hi, I'm Professor Green, and today we'll be doing part 2 of Chapter 17, our final chapter in this course. So we're focusing now on training and management development. It's such a key part, and you probably wonder, like, why are we spending so much time talking about training and management development? It's just because it's such a key part of creating revenue and profits for an organization. Let's go ahead and get into it. So training, to differentiate between training and management development, two different things here in this instance. Training focuses upon preparing the manager for a specific job. This is probably more you think of as like technical training. Starts with maybe learning Excel or something that you need for particular coding or something that you need in particularly for that job. But then the management development actually focuses on developing the skills of the manager over their career with the firm. So these are more of the softer skills, the emotional intelligence, the how to handle responsibility, how to handle conflict, how to handle other cultures. So traditionally, right, training has been considered more important than management development. And right, if you talk to your grandparents, they probably didn't have a lot of management development in their tenure working in organizations. But as I said, my dad was working on his PhD in the early 70s, and this is a really interesting and exciting topic that showed up. And then he went on to have a career in HR because of that, because the organizations in the 70s and 80s quickly grabbed onto this idea that they could make a lot more money if they invested properly in management development. So it's still catching on, but it's continuing to move there. And we're going to focus the next couple of slides as to why it's so important. There are three major trainings that they talk about for expatriates majors. The first one is cultural training, seeking to foster an appreciation for the host country's culture. So really important to understand, what the etiquette is, things that they do or they don't do in this country, right? Do they bow? Do they shake hands? Do they say namaste? That's just the surface of things. Language development. So really important to get to know, to understand how to say hello, goodbye, thank you, at least. And then practical training. This helps the expat manager and family ease into day-to-day life of the host country. And so when I had, as I mentioned, a boss of mine who came from New York to Switzerland to work at Credit Suisse, one of the things that I thought would be helpful, because I was Swiss American, I'd been already living in Switzerland for a long time, well, a good portion of my life, but when he came, I was there already for that stint in my life for a couple of years. And I said, it's really important that you know how to, park your car, how do the part of the parking meters work, because they're very different from the United States. So you need to know how to, like his wife asked me, what are the expiration dates on the yogurt, right? Because there are two that are different from the United States. And so the interesting thing that the author talks about in this textbook is that there's about 30% of expats these days receive training before they get moved to a different country. And that's pretty low percentage, right? The author talks about that there's been research done that the spouse should be invited into this training because it really helps the adjustment and making sure that the expat stays for the amount of time that they've agreed upon ahead of time. Here is a really nice photo of three leaders at the Lenovo group. So the people that make the computers. You'll see that there's here Yang from China on the left. He's shaking hands with CEO Steve Ward. He's American, even though Lenovo, right, is an Asian company. And the non-executive director here, Lee, also Chinese. They're at a conference here in Hong Kong. So good role model at Lenovo that they are trying to mix up and diversify their leadership. The next slide talks about repatriate of expatriates. And you might not think about this if you haven't been in an expat position yet. But as I said, I've moved abroad many times and come back to the US many times. And the first time was very hard to come back. And so what they do is that managers need to be prepared for re-entry into their home country. This involves the HRM planning. We also want to make sure that the role of the employee in the home country Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to go on to the next slide yet. At the end of the assignment is clear, because so often they come back to their home country and their information and knowledge that they gained while abroad isn't being well used. There's not a role for them when they want to come back that is equal to the level that they were at before. It can kind of become messy when they come back. And they also want to make sure that they, utilize the information that the employee acquired abroad. There's this case study that the book talks about with Monsanto, which is really great. I didn't realize how great they are when they talk about repatriating their managers. They say that they have a program in place where 3 months after they come back, they set up a meeting with HR and 3 colleagues that they have chosen, and they spend an hour or so, I think maybe it's 3 hours, I don't remember, but a handful of different hours presenting kind of like a show and tell, all that they learned and information that they collected during their stay abroad. And I thought that was so great, because the employees have said that they just feel so heard once they've done something like that. And they don't do it right away because they're really busy with adjusting and moving and everything like this. But 3 months in, they're hopefully pretty more settled. And it gives them an opportunity to tell someone at the organization everything that they've done when they were abroad. So now we talk a little bit about management development and strategy. This increases the skill levels of managers, talking about management education and rotation of managers through jobs. And so management development programs help to build a strong unifying culture and informal management network. And so this now supports both transnational and global strategies. So their idea now that, as we'll get into it, you'll see that people have networks, they know people abroad, they understand what it means to work abroad, they have more appreciation for their colleagues after working abroad. They're just more open. They just bring a lot of, diversity into the organization, even though maybe they are still the same race than the home country, but they've been abroad, and so they've had all these new experiences that they can include. Let's talk a little bit about a performance appraisal. This is used to evaluate employees, obviously, and it's an important element of the firm's control system. So you want to make sure that HR has set up a clear performance appraisal system so that your manager has an opportunity to give you feedback, and you're able to then work on things that maybe might have a gap. But there are some problems when people go abroad, that there's an unintentional bias either from the home country or from the host country. Because if you're working abroad, you might have a boss still at home, but you might have a boss in your host country. And the type of stuff that you're working on might be misinterpreted by one or either or both of those bosses. So the host country managers can be biased towards their own frame of reference. So maybe, like when I was working in Switzerland, I was always very friendly compared to the Swiss. And I think the Swiss found it refreshing, but I could see that maybe some people were turned off by it, because, the Americans are so friendly and the Swiss are so serious. And I was always very, smiley and open to having conversations with any level of employee. But I could see that and my boss actually was also Swiss American. He was born in Switzerland, but he'd lived in the US for a long time, and he had a wife from America. So he really understood who I was, which was great. But if I potentially had a more Swiss boss, that could have been misinterpreted, being more friendly than the Swiss typically see. Also, the appraisal sometimes rely on hard data, productivity, profitability, market share, etc. And sometimes it's misinterpreted because there might be a foreign exchange currency devaluation or evaluation that could be tied into those numbers. Also, some of the soft skills are important, and they just don't show up on that hard data. So what to do about this? So there's some guidelines here for more accurate performance appraisal. And again, I think of the KPMG example in Saudi Arabia when I think of this. So as I said, KPMG has more of a franchise model. And so they kind of can do their own show a lot of the times, just like Unilever in these host countries. So to do it well, to do a performance appraisal as well, we want to wait. One more weight should be given to the on-site manager's appraisal than to the off-site manager's appraisal, because the on-site manager really knows what's happening on a day-to-day basis. The former expatriate who maybe had your role before in that same location, they should be involved in the appraisal process. And I thought that was a really great, almost unique idea. And lastly, the home office managers should be consulted before the on-site manager completes a formal termination evaluation. And this is exactly where I think KPMG went wrong, because they were allowing the local leadership in Saudi Arabia to quickly fire people who had been expatriated to Saudi from usually the Americas. And so, yeah, then those families were getting into trouble, like because they had to leave quickly and it was kind of stressful, very stressful. And, they weren't used to those types of regulations. And as we saw, maybe they were being fired for the wrong reasons as well. So there are two key issues that we talk about with compensation. Another good big piece to this human resources puzzle. Let's go ahead and take a break here, and I will start the third video in just a minute.